The Zephyrian Council had studied dozens of species across the galaxy, cataloging their behaviors with the precision of xenobiologists examining laboratory specimens. They had successfully domesticated the warlike Krallans, turning them into docile gardeners. The predatory Vorthak now served as gentle nursemaids to Zephyrian young. Even the notoriously stubborn Grix had been transformed into obedient construction workers. Humans, the Council believed, would be no different. Dr. Veltar adjusted his crystalline viewing apparatus as he observed the first batch of human subjects in Containment Facility Omega-7. The facility floated in the void between star systems, a pristine white structure designed to eliminate any environmental variables that might interfere with the domestication process. "Begin Phase 1, Veltar commanded, his forearms moving across the control interface with practiced efficiency. The humans, 50 specimens captured from various colonies, found themselves in comfortable but sterile environments. Clean white rooms, nutritious paste delivered at regular intervals, entertainment screens showing peaceful Zephyrian cultural programming. The temperature was maintained at optimal levels, the air perfectly filtered. Every need was met except one: freedom. The Zephyrians had perfected this process over millennia. Comfort breeding, they called it. Remove all stressors, provide complete security, and within 3 generations, any species would lose its aggressive edge. The subjects would become grateful for their care, dependent on their providers, and most importantly, controllable. The first month proceeded according to protocol. Some humans showed initial resistance, shouting, banging on walls, refusing food, standard responses that always faded as subjects realized the futility of rebellion. Dr. Veltar noted with satisfaction that several humans had already begun, expressing gratitude for their meals and accommodations. But then came the anomalies. Subject 23, a female called Sarah Chen, had fashioned a crude knife from her food dispenser. She'd been systematically weakening the door seals during rest periods. When guards arrived for routine maintenance, she struck with lethal precision, acquiring their energy weapons before they could react. "Impossible," Veltar muttered, reviewing the security footage. Fear conditioning should have eliminated such behaviors by now. Subject 7, Marcus Rodriguez, had somehow convinced a dozen other humans to coordinate their efforts. They'd created makeshift explosives using cleaning supplies and started a fire that nearly breached containment. Their synchronized attack on multiple facility systems showed a level of strategic thinking that should have been suppressed weeks ago. The Zephyrians increased sedatives in the food supply. They bombarded the subjects with pacification frequencies. They introduced artificial pheromones designed to increase submission and reduce aggression. The humans adapted to everything. They learned to identify drugged food by smell and taste. They covered their ears during pacification broadcasts and hummed their own melodies to maintain morale. Some subjects deliberately made themselves sick to purge sedatives from their systems. Others exercised obsessively in their cells, maintaining physical strength despite every attempt to encourage lethargy. "Perhaps we miscalculated their generation cycle," suggested Dr. Kethmore, Veltar's assistant. "Maybe domestication requires 4 or 5 generations instead of 3. But Veltar had begun studying human historical records seized during their capture operations. What he found defied every principle of behavioral conditioning the Zephyrians had developed. Humans had domesticated themselves, but only partially, and the process had made them more dangerous, not less. They had created elaborate social structures that channeled aggression into art, sports, and innovation, rather than eliminating it entirely. They had learned to cooperate in massive groups while maintaining individual initiative. Most disturbing of all, they had repeatedly survived and thrived under conditions that should have broken their spirits completely. The humans called it resilience. The Zephyrians had no equivalent concept. By month 6, the facility was in chaos. Humans had established a complex communication network using light patterns, tapping codes, and modified electronic devices. They had organized themselves into specialized groups, engineers who sabotaged life support systems, soldiers who planned coordinated attacks, and leaders who maintained morale and unity. When the Zephyrians tried to separate the leaders, the humans simply developed new ones. When they isolated the engineers, other subjects taught themselves technical skills. When they removed the soldiers, teachers and shopkeepers and children stepped forward to fill the role. The breaking point came when Subject 15, an elderly man named Professor Williams, managed to access the facility's computer network using components salvaged from entertainment screens. Within hours, he had downloaded the station's complete database and transmitted humanity's location to every corner of the galaxy. But more than that, he had learned something the Zephyrians never intended him to discover. Humans weren't the first species they had tried to domesticate. They were the 100th. The realization spread through the human population like wildfire. They weren't victims. They were part of a systematic program of species subjugation that spanned centuries. The Zephyrians hadn't just captured humans, they had enslaved entire civilizations, breaking their spirits and turning them into living tools. When the rescue ships arrived, human vessels that had followed Williams's signal, they found Facility Omega-7 under human control. The 50 subjects had somehow overpowered a crew of 300 Zephyrians and taken command of the station's weapon systems. Dr. Veltar, bound and placed in one of his own containment cells, watched through the transparent aluminum walls as humans worked alongside freed Krallans, Vorthak, and Grix. The supposedly domesticated species had remembered who they used to be the moment they witnessed human defiance. "How?" Veltar asked when Sarah Chen stopped by his cell. She looked at him with eyes that held no hatred, only determination. "You made one crucial mistake," she said. "You thought domestication meant breaking us. But humans have never been fully wild or fully tame. We're something else entirely." She gestured toward the viewing port, where ships from a dozen different species were arriving to collect their liberated people. "We're free," she continued. "And freedom once tasted can never be forgotten. We just reminded everyone else what they used to be." As Chen walked away, Veltar finally understood the fatal flaw in their research. The Zephyrians had succeeded in domesticating many species by eliminating their capacity for rebellion. But humans had spent thousands of years domesticating themselves while deliberately preserving that very capacity. They had created a species that could be civilized, but never truly tamed. The experiment hadn't ended in fire and steel by accident. For humans, fire and steel were simply another form of civilization, one that burned brightest when freedom was threatened, and across the galaxy that fire was spreading.